Welcome back for another week of our fantasy football vidcast here at the Daily Illini. I'm JJ.
And I'm Eric.
All right. Well, we do not have a guest this week, but
first time in a few weeks.
Yeah, we'll just go into our fantasy teams, and for once, I do not have to complain because once again, Russell Wilson came through. Everyone hated that I picked him. Everyone thought I was dumb, but really, the 2 times that I've won this season, which is embarrassing to even admit that I've only won 2 of 7 games, but it's all been because of him. I mean, he had a career game, 300 yards passing, 100 yards rushing, first time a quarterback's ever done that, and it got me fantasy wins. So, you know what? I can't complain about Russell Wilson, and I never will.
Yeah, no, it's good for you because, in the same league, and I was expecting you to be better than the team that you're currently fielding.
Right.
For my 4 teams, I went 3-1 on the weekend. One team is just totally in the dumps right now. It's just, no matter who I throw in that lineup, they just don't perform, and it's just frustrating. But the good news is I have held on in the other team, so now I'm either 3-4 or 4-3. So I've climbed my way back into playoff contention, and I'm really happy about that.
It's really come down to, in both leagues, I won in both leagues this week, and it really came down to Russell Wilson again, and I think that can kind of carry us into our hots, our knots, and our waiver wire pickups, because to me, at least, this week's all about quarterbacks for me. So for my hot, I'm going to go ahead and go with both Phillip Rivers and Peyton Manning because it's going to be a quarterback battle. You got in fantasy points at least, you got the number 2 and the number 3 going against each other with Peyton and Phillip. So you got them playing each other. I mean, and it's a division matchup. It's in prime time on Thursday night. I mean, that's going to be a good game to watch.
And neither team has a very strong running game either.
Exactly. So it's going to be a very pass-oriented thing. And while I think that most everyone that has Peyton Manning is playing him, I know Phillip Rivers, for some reason, tends to be that bench player, and I think it's because of recent years past.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you know, I didn't quite get along with him as far as a fantasy player a few years ago.
Same here, in 2011, and yes, I agree.
Exactly. But so I think that doubt has kind of caused people to sit him in the past, but this week, do not sit him. He is someone that if you're debating between 2 quarterbacks, and Phillip Rivers is one of them, put him in the starting lineup.
And piggyback. Going off of Peyton Manning, sorry, I had a slip of, I couldn't speak there. But going off of Peyton Manning, my hot is Demaryius Thomas, his number 1 target. Thomas had that slow start to the season, and the last 3 weeks he just finally turned it on. He went from a middle of the pack wide receiver, probably because he was injured, to the number 1, absolute stud. Throw him in your number 1, have confidence that he's going to get you at least 15 to 20 points.
I'm going to go back to quarterbacks now for my knots because while I think that the Cowboys and Tony Romo have done well and they have a great record and everyone's wondering to see when they'll break, I don't think against Washington is going to be that game where you're going to see something change, especially when they're debating between RG3, Kirk Cousins, and McCoy. If you can't
Colt
even
McCoy,
figure
that is.
Exactly, yeah. If you can't even decide between your quarterbacks, I mean, what did he have? He had about 125 yards and 1 touchdown last week. I mean, if you can't even decide between them, how can you expect any of them to do well? Mm-hmm. And how do you know which one to do? Because they haven't even fully decided on which one they want to play. So if you have 1 or 2 of these and you're wondering about playing them because of a bye situation, don't play any of them. I don't think a single one of those 3 is going to do well, regardless of which one plays.
Yeah, no, and if anything, pick up the Cowboys' defense, stream them for this week. I mean, Cousins is the turnover machine. McCoy, yeah, he has a few games under his belt through his years in Cleveland, but nothing sticks out about him. And RG3, he's coming back from that injury, and he's also turnover prone at times. So yeah, I definitely agree. Stay away from Washington quarterback.
At least since I've been playing fantasy football, I can't remember the last time Colt McCoy was a serious factor in fantasy football.
Probably
so
never.
If they go with him, I don't expect that to change one bit.
If you're going with Colt McCoy, then
you're in as much trouble as I feel like I'm in most weeks.
Yeah, my knot is 2 wide receiver combination, Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, both Bears receivers. It's been, I would say, disappointing thus far for the Bears. Here you have these 2 stud receivers, and we're just expecting the offense just to explode, put up points. And it just seems like every other week they can't do anything. Like, one week they both perform well, and then, like, as we saw against the Dolphins, they just got shut down for whatever reason. I mean, Marshall barely made a dent. Jeffrey had 2 catches in the first 5 minutes, and that was it. So until the Bears get back on track, Jay Cutler and Mark Trestman, they come up with a solid game plan. I would say stay away from them. As much as I don't want to say that because I have Jeffrey on the team, but he's just not producing right now, and gotta go with the hot hands.
And Trestman came out today and was talking about that locker room turmoil that may or not have heard about. So when it comes to that, I mean, Brandon Marshall calling out players, whatever happened, no one's really saying specifically who he called out or whatever, but just Brandon Marshall hasn't been great this year. He's struggled where in a couple games he only had a couple of catches, and so I think a lot of people are very disappointed by that, and that's not to discredit Marshall as a receiver because Marshall and Jeffrey are both terrific receivers, but Chicago's struggling with their offensive plan, and that hurts as a Chicago loyalist, but you got to go with the facts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it is, and there's not much you can do about it.
Exactly.
Which kind of takes me into my waiver wire pickup. The defense is kind of about the same. I mean, the defense has changed. It's gotten a little bit better. Some games, they will seem more electric than they did last year at all, but they're still not great. So when you get down to it, for the waiver wire pickup, I think I'm going to go with Brandon LaFell because I don't expect the Bears' pass defense to be very good against Tom Brady this year.
And Brady's turned it on ever since those rumors of him being traded for I don't even know who started him or why they started him, but ever since they started, they just lit a fire under him, and he's been playing lights out. And this is the Patriots. This is Tom Brady, coached by Bill Belichick. I mean, they're kind of shaky at the beginning of the year, but then they just take off.
The last time I remember the Bears and
the Blizzard game.
Yeah, exactly. The Bears and the Patriots in that Blizzard game, and it was awful. I don't expect it to be that bad, but I would expect if you're struggling with someone, you got a waiver wire pickup that you need to kind of fill some of those bye-week gaps. Brendan LaFell could be an honest, solid choice.
Yeah, definitely. My waiver wire pickup is a running back. I don't know if you remember, but a few weeks ago I told you to pick up Matt Asiata of the Vikings and hold on to him until, and this is my waiver wire pickup, Jerick McKinnon stepped into the starter's role. And last 2 weeks, he has stepped into the starter's role. He's performed solidly for the Vikings in the absence of Adrian Peterson. So go ahead and drop Asiata, pick up McKinnon. McKinnon is a way better athlete than Asiata. I was actually just reading the other day, head coach Mike Zimmer asked his running backs to gain an insane 3 yards after the first hit. And for just put that in perspective, the leading NFL guy is Chris Ivory, and he averages like 2.6 yards after the first hit. McKinnon surpassed that with a 3. He met Mike Zimmer's goal. And like that's just a crazy stat. Just shows how good of an athlete he is. And with the Vikings, Bridgewater being a rookie and everything, I'm going to lean on McKinnon. He may not always put up, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he should at least get you solid points.
Well, and then with the situation with their quarterbacks being one major issue, Adrian Peterson, your top back for years, being another issue, and then Asiata just not fully stepping up to the plate as you kind of predicted would happen, I think that that's a great waiver wire pickup, and I think that even if you're not necessarily looking for a flex position, it's worth picking up and keeping on your bench, and if it has another solid week, then, throw him in.
Yeah, throw him in,
and then
especially if you hold on to him, especially when it gets to the playoff time, because the Vikings aren't going to be in playoff contention, so he's going to be playing. And especially with doubts of whether Adrian Peterson is going to stay, they might just keep him in there and see what they got for next year.
Speaking of playoff contention, we've got two teams that both could very well be in the playoffs this year, with Denver and San Diego 5-1, 5-2, going head-to-head Thursday night. Kind of going back to this quarterback situation that I was talking about earlier, where you should play both of them. I think that there's a lot of potential, maybe not the defenses if it's going to be a shootout, but with players like Demaryius Thomas, both the quarterbacks, the other receivers that Phillip Rivers has in his arsenal, all of them are worth taking a look at, which is why I think that Denver and San Diego is our matchup to watch this week.
I agree. I just hope that it doesn't turn into a blowout like most of the primetime games have been this season for some reason, especially the Thursday night games.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it'll be different because Denver is 5-1, San Diego's 5-2, so this is for essentially the division lead. It's going to be a huge game. And hopefully it's better because last week we had Indianapolis and Cincinnati, and it turned out to be such a dud, and it was hard to watch.
Well, and I think that both teams, while their records don't necessarily reflect it, have something to prove. Denver has been getting pushed more than I think people thought that they would this year. I think everyone kind of expected Denver to come back with a little bit of a fire after getting blown out in the Super Bowl. And then you've got the Chargers, who have to live in that shadow. They've been living in that shadow of Denver for the past couple of years since Peyton came. So they're really trying to say, hey, we're the team. you're not the team. So I think that both teams are trying to prove that they are the team. And I think that makes for a great game of football to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, definitely.
All right.
Peyton Manning.
Absolutely. Well, we hope your fantasy football teams do well this week. I certainly hope mine do well. If you have any fantasy football questions before crunch time and game time, feel free to ask us questions on Twitter. Until then, we'll see you next week.